The first time they told me I was sick, it wasn't in a hospital. It was at the dinner table. And everyone was smiling.
My mother placed a hand over mine, like she was comforting me. My uncle nodded slowly like he'd already accepted something I didn't even know existed. And my cousin wouldn't look me in the eye. Then my father spoke. Calm, measured, like he had rehearsed it. You've been under too much stress lately, he said. We decided it's time you take a step back. A step back? From what? My job? My life? My decisions? I remember laughing slightly because I genuinely thought it was a joke, but no one else laughed. Mini cliffhanger. Because that's when I noticed something strange. No one corrected him. No one asked what he meant. They all just agreed. My name is Adrian. And until that moment, I thought my biggest problem in life was work pressure, deadlines, bills, routine exhaustion, normal adult life stuff. I didn't know my family had already started rewriting my reality. It began small, too small to argue with. My mother suggesting I see a doctor just to talk. My uncle casually mentioning professional evaluation. My cousin forwarded me articles about burnout and mental instability, all framed as concern, all delivered with soft voices and careful smiles. But when you zoom out, it wasn't concern. It was coordination, mini cliffhanger, because I didn't see it at first. Not because I was naive, but because it came from people I trusted. The first appointment wasn't called an appointment. It was called a consultation. My mother drove me there herself. She even brought tea in a travel cup, like it was a normal outing. The clinic looked clean, too clean. White walls, soft lighting, everything designed to feel calm, controlled, safe, but something about it felt rehearsed, like the entire environment had been designed to lower resistance. The doctor greeted me warmly, smiled too easily, nodded too much. Just a routine conversation, he said. No urgency, no explanation, just conversation. My mother stayed in the room. That was the first boundary that didn't feel like a boundary anymore. Mini cliffhanger. Because I should have said no, but I didn't. The questions started harmless. Sleep patterns, work stress, energy levels, normal things. Then they slowly shifted. Memory lapses, mood changes, focus issues, perception questions. Nothing direct, nothing obvious, just enough to plant doubt. And my mother answered some questions for me. Before I could, that part still sticks with me. Not what I said, but what I didn't get to say. When we left, she squeezed my shoulder. Soft, reassuring. You did well, she said, like I had passed something, not experienced it. Mini cliffhanger. And that was the first time I felt like I had been evaluated without permission. Over the next few weeks, things escalated quietly. Too quietly. Documents appeared. Forms I didn't remember signing. Appointments I didn't schedule. Emails I didn't receive. When I asked about them, the answer was always the same. You must have forgotten. That sentence started appearing too often, like it had become a tool, not a statement. Forgotten, confused, stressed, overwhelmed. Words that slowly stopped describing feelings and started describing me. But here's the part that didn't make sense. I was still working, still functioning, still meeting deadlines, still speaking clearly. Nothing about my life looked unstable, except the way they were describing it. Mini cliffhanger. Because the story they were telling about me didn't match the person living it. And that gap was getting wider. Then came the second doctor, different office, different tone, same script. This time, my father was there too, sitting across from me like an observer. Not a parent, not support, an observer. The doctor flipped through a file. Long pause, then looked at me. We're seeing indicators consistent with cognitive instability, he said calmly. I blinked. What indicators? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he turned the page, pointed at notes. Words I had never heard used about myself. My father exhaled quietly beside me, like this was expected, like this was confirmed. Mini cliffhanger. Because I realized something terrifying in that moment. They weren't waiting for a diagnosis. They were presenting one. I'd like to see the original evaluation, I said. The doctor smiled slightly. Professional, detached. This is based on multiple assessments. Multiple, but I had only been in one real appointment. I turned to my father. Did you approve this? He hesitated for half a second. Too long. Then nodded. We're trying to help you, Adrian. Help. That word again. I remember looking at both of them and feeling something shift internally. Not panic, not anger, something colder. Realization. Mini cliffhanger. Because I started noticing how carefully the story was being shaped without my input. That night, I checked my email. There was a folder I didn't recognize. Shared documents, medical summaries, reports, my name on every page, but not my handwriting, not my input, not my voice. I opened one file and stopped breathing for a second. Patient exhibits signs of severe impairment affecting decision-making capacity. Severe impairment, decision-making capacity. I leaned back slowly, reading it again, then again, because none of it matched reality. But on paper, it sounded final. Mini cliffhanger. And that's when I understood the direction this was going. It wasn't about concern. It wasn't about health. It wasn't even about misunderstanding. It was documentation. And documentation has consequences. The next morning, I was told not to go to work. My mother said it gently, like she was protecting me from stress. You should rest, she said. Let us handle things for now. Handle things. I nodded slowly, not because I agreed, but because I wanted to see how far this would go. That's the moment something changed in me. Not loudly, not emotionally, quietly, strategically. I stopped arguing, stopped correcting them, stopped reacting, and started observing. Mini cliffhanger. Because when people think you believe them, they reveal everything. Over the next few days, I overheard conversations, fragments, not meant for me. He needs to be cooperative. The transfer will be easier if he doesn't resist. Once it's finalized, everything is protected. Protected from me or from truth. I didn't interrupt, didn't confront, just stored every word, every tone, every contradiction. Then came the moment that made everything click. I was walking past the hallway when I heard my uncle's voice. Low, confident. It's already in motion, he said, just waiting on final confirmation. Pause, then laughter. He won't even notice until it's done. Mini cliffhanger. Because that was the first time I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding spiraling out of control. It was a process, a structured one, and I was the subject. That night, I sat alone in my room, looking at the same documents again, trying to understand one thing. What exactly were they trying to take? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. If you want the truth about your diagnosis, stop trusting your family. I stared at it for a long time. No reply. No movement. Just silence. Because now I knew something important. The diagnosis wasn't a lie. The reason behind it was. And whatever came next was already in motion. I didn't reply to the message right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I understood something important in that moment. Whoever sent it wasn't guessing. They knew. And people who know don't just drop messages like that for no reason. Mini cliffhanger. Because the next step wasn't emotional. It was tactical. I turned my phone face down and sat in silence for a full minute. No music. No distractions. Just my own thoughts trying to organize what was real and what was staged. The word that kept repeating in my head was simple. Control. Not illness. Not stress. Not concern. Control. I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't looking for proof I was okay. I was looking for proof of something else. That I wasn't imagining this. Mini cliffhanger. Because the first thing I found wasn't in my inbox. It was in shared folders I didn't even remember being added to. Medical files, legal drafts, administrative documents, all quietly stored under my name. Except I hadn't uploaded a single one of them. I clicked the first file. It opened instantly. Too clean, too organized, like it had been prepared for presentation. Patient assessment summary. My name at the top, my date of birth, my ID details. Everything correct, too correct, But the content? That's where it started breaking reality. Episodes of cognitive instability reported. I stopped reading for a second. Reported by who? I scroll further. Family observations indicate decline in judgment. Family observations, not medical tests, not evaluations, observations. Mini cliffhanger, because I realized something subtle but critical. This wasn't clinical truth. This was narrative building. And narratives can be manufactured. I opened the next document. This one made my stomach tighten slightly. A consent form, signed, supposedly by me, authorizing temporary decision-making support measures. I zoomed in. My signature, almost identical, but not mine, close enough to pass, different enough to be wrong. My hands went still, not shaking. Still, because forging a signature isn't just fraud, it's intent. I leaned back slowly in my chair, and for the first time, I didn't feel confused anymore. Mini cliffhanger. I felt something colder. Clarity. I started building a timeline. Everything they had done, step by step. Appointment, document, consent, follow-up, restriction. Each action connected to the next like a chain. Not random, not emotional, procedural. And that's when it became obvious. This wasn't about my health. It was about my authority. I stood up and walked into the hallway. The house was quiet. Too quiet for how many people were supposedly concerned about me. My mother was in the kitchen. My father was on a call in the living room. My uncle's shoes were by the door, present, all of them, always nearby. But something fell off now, not their presence, their coordination. Mini cliffhanger. Because people don't move like that by accident. I poured myself a glass of water and stood there for a moment, listening, not to what was being said, but how it was being said. My father's voice was lower than usual, controlled, measured. He was saying words like, final stage, documentation ready. Transfer confirmation, transfer. That word again. I stepped slightly closer to the doorway without being seen. And then I heard it. My uncle, once he's officially classified, everything becomes easier legally. Silence. Then my father, he hasn't resisted yet. A pause. Then that's good. Mini cliffhanger. Because hasn't resisted yet implied something already decided. Something already in motion. I walked back to my room without making a sound, closed the door, and sat down again. Now I wasn't guessing anymore. I was confirming. I opened my phone again. This time, I replied to the unknown number. Just one message. What exactly is being done to me? The response came faster than I expected. You're being prepared for a legal guardianship transfer. I stared at it, reading it once. Twice. Then I typed, based on what diagnosis? 3 dots appeared instantly. They didn't hesitate. The one they submitted. Mini cliffhanger. Because that sentence changed everything. Submitted, not diagnosed, not confirmed. Submitted. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them again, something had shifted internally. Not fear, not panic. Structure. I started researching quietly. Legal frameworks, medical authority laws, guardianship procedures, consent thresholds. What I found made my stomach tighten, but not emotionally. Practically, if someone is declared unfit and paperwork is filed, control can be transferred. Legally, quietly, permanently. And if I didn't intervene before finalization, I wouldn't just lose control of decisions. I would lose the ability to challenge them easily. Mini cliffhanger. Because now the timeline wasn't vague anymore. It was urgent. I checked the files again. One detail stood out this time. A scheduled date. 2 days from now. Final review meeting. Sign-off expected. Transfer confirmation pending. I sat still, then whispered to myself, so that's the deadline. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just fact. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was afraid, but because I was thinking too clearly. Every conversation replayed in my mind. Every concern. Every smile. Every suggestion. Every appointment. None of it was random. All of it was aligned. Mini cliffhanger. And the most disturbing part? No one had raised their voice once. That's when manipulation becomes dangerous. When it doesn't feel like violence. It feels like care. The next morning, my mother knocked softly on my door. "Breakfast is ready," she said. Warm tone, normal tone, too normal. I opened the door, looked at her, and for a brief second, she hesitated. Just a fraction, like she sensed something had changed. "You didn't sleep well," she said gently. Not a question, a statement. I nodded slightly. "Just thinking." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes fully. "You don't need to think so much," she said. "We're handling everything." Mini cliffhanger, because that sentence used to feel comforting. Now it felt like confirmation. I sat at the table with them that morning. My father reading news, my mother serving food, my uncle checking his phone. A normal family scene. Except nothing about it felt normal anymore. My father finally spoke. "Tomorrow will be a long day," he said casually. I looked up slightly. "Tomorrow?" He nodded. "Final evaluation meeting." Silence at the table. My mother added quickly. "Just procedural. Nothing to worry about." But I noticed something now. No one was looking at me when they said that. Mini cliffhanger. Because when people avoid eye contact while reassuring you, they're not reassuring you. They're rehearsing. After breakfast, I went back to my room and closed the door. I stood there for a long moment. Then I said quietly, "Okay." Not to them, to myself. Because now I understood the structure. And structures can be studied. I opened my laptop again. And this time, I didn't look for truth. I started preparing for impact. Mini cliffhanger. Because sometimes the moment you stop reacting is the moment everything stops being in their control. And I had just stopped reacting. The morning of the final meeting didn't feel like a morning at all. It felt staged, like the house was holding its breath. No raised voices, no urgency, no panic, just quiet movement like everyone knew their role. Mini cliffhanger. Because I finally understood something important. They weren't preparing me for a meeting. They were preparing themselves for a transfer. I got dressed slowly, not because I was nervous, but because I was watching the clock more than the mirror. Every second mattered now, not emotionally, legally. My father knocked once. "Ready?" he asked. Normal tone, controlled tone, too controlled. I nodded. "Yeah." He smiled slightly, relieved. Like I had agreed to something instead of walking toward it knowingly. Mini cliffhanger. Because that relief told me everything. They still believed I didn't know. The drive to the facility was silent. My mother in the front seat. My father beside her. Me in the back. Like a passenger in my own life. But this time, I wasn't observing like before. I was tracking. Every turn. Every stop. Every minute. We weren't going to a hospital. Not really. It was a private administrative medical hybrid office. Neutral building. Designed to look harmless, but used for decisions that weren't meant to feel harmless. We arrived. Same calm exterior. Same soft lighting inside. Same controlled environment. But now I saw it differently. Not calming. Controlling. Mini cliffhanger. Because environments like this don't just treat people. They redefine them. Inside the waiting room, everything was already set. 2 men in suits, 1 doctor, 1 legal advisor, and a file on the table with my name on it. My name, but not my voice in it. My father greeted them warmly, too warmly, like this was a successful handover rather than a sensitive evaluation. The doctor nodded at me. Professional smile. "Let's begin." I sat down, not resisting, not reacting, just watching. My mother placed a hand on my shoulder. Soft pressure, reassuring gesture, but it felt like anchoring. Mini cliffhanger. Because anchors are used when something might drift or escape. The doctor opened the file, flipped through pages. Same familiar documents, same fabricated narrative, but now it was structured for final approval. "We've reviewed all previous assessments," he said calmly. Pause. "We are prepared to confirm the diagnosis classification today." Classification, not discussion, not evaluation. Confirmation. I looked at him, then at my father, then at my mother. all calm, all aligned, and I realized something. They weren't waiting for truth. They were waiting for authority. I spoke for the first time. What happens if I disagree? The room went quiet for half a second. Not dramatic, procedural, like the question had been expected but not encouraged. The legal advisor spoke. In cases of confirmed impairment, disagreement does not override assessment. Mini cliffhanger. Because that sentence was the entire trap. Disagreement meant nothing once classification was accepted. And classification was what they were here to finalize. I nodded slowly, then leaned back. Interesting, I said quietly, not emotional, just observant. My father looked at me, a small smile. You don't need to make this difficult. That sentence, that exact sentence. Not you don't need to worry. Not this is for your safety. You don't need to make this difficult. Mini cliffhanger. Because difficulty only exists when resistance is expected. The doctor continued. We'll proceed with final confirmation unless there are objections backed by medical evidence. That was the opening, the trap, the closing door. But I had stopped seeing it as a door days ago. I saw his timing. I reached into my jacket slowly, pulled out a folder, placed it on the table. No one reacted immediately. They assumed it was nothing. Maybe personal documents. Maybe confusion. Maybe denial. The doctor opened it first, then stopped. A pause, long enough to feel uncomfortable. Then he flipped another page. His expression changed slightly. Not shock, recognition. My father leaned forward. What is that? I looked at him. Calm, steady. Evidence, I said. Mini cliffhanger. Because that word changed the energy in the room instantly. The legal advisor took the folder next. Read. Paused. Read again. Then slowly said, These were not submitted in the record. I nodded. Because they weren't created by you. Silence. My mother frowned. What does that mean? I turned slightly toward her. Still calm. Still controlled. It means, I said, that someone added documents to my name without my consent. The room tightened. Not emotionally. Structurally. Like something inside the system had just been misaligned. Mini cliffhanger. Because systems can tolerate emotion, but they don't tolerate corruption. The doctor flipped faster now, checking signatures, dates, metadata. Then he stopped again, looked up. Some of these signatures appear inconsistent. That was the first crack. My father's voice sharpened slightly. These are procedural documents. Don't overcomplicate this. But now the tone had shifted. He wasn't confident anymore. He was defensive. I leaned forward slightly. Shall I show the recordings next? That line hit differently. Not loud, not emotional, but precise. The legal advisor looked up. Recordings? I nodded. Conversations discussing transfer timing. Pause. Conversations discussing classification before evaluation. Mini cliffhanger. Because now the room was no longer calm. It was reactive. My mother's hand left my shoulder. Slowly, like she had realized touch no longer meant influence. The doctor closed the folder slightly. This is serious if verified. I nodded again. That's why I brought it. My father exhaled sharply. This is being manipulated. But now his voice wasn't controlled. It was strained. I looked at him. Which part? I asked quietly. The documents or the plan? Silence again. Longer this time. He didn't answer. Because answering would confirm something he didn't want to name. Mini cliffhanger. And that's when the legal advisor picked up the phone. Quietly. Stepped aside. Made a call. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Not panic. Procedure. And procedure is more dangerous than panic. Because it doesn't hesitate. My mother spoke softly. This doesn't need to escalate. I looked at her. For the first time fully. Not as a parent. Not as comfort, as part of the structure. It already did, I said. Silence. Footsteps approached outside the room. Not rushed. Controlled. The door opened. A second legal authority entered. Then another. Mini cliffhanger. Because now the room was no longer a family meeting. It was an investigation. The first legal authority spoke. We have been informed of potential documentation irregularities. Pause. Proceeding with audit. My father stood slightly. This is unnecessary. But no one responded to him. Not anymore, because authority had changed hands in real time. Quietly, legally, irreversibly, the doctor looked at me again. Different now, not as a patient, as a subject of dispute. "Did you authorize any of these submissions?" he asked. I shook my head. No, simple. Final. Mini cliffhanger. And that single answer collapsed everything they built. The legal advisor closed the file, slowly, then said, "We will be freezing all pending decisions until full verification is complete." Silence hit the room again, but this time it wasn't controlled. It was breaking. My mother stepped back slightly. My father didn't speak. My uncle, who had been silent until now, looked down at his hands, because now there was no narrative left to hold, only consequences. I stood up slowly, not rushed, not emotional, just finished. "You try to define me without me," I said calmly. Pause. That doesn't hold anymore. No one responded, because there was nothing to respond with. Mini cliffhanger. And that's when I walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard paper shuffling, voices lowering, calls being made, processes shifting. But I didn't turn around. Not once. Because the moment you reclaim your name, you don't argue with a lie anymore. You leave it to collapse on its own.